At the time, we had just come back from Vietnam, and there was a threat. King David and King Alfred planned because of the blacks, and remember, it was mostly blacks that were fighting in the end in Vietnam. And they feared, at least this is my conjecture, they feared that these soldiers who were coming back home with the knowledge of warfare and all the tactics that they learned about the Europeans and warfare were to be used on them. The King Alfred plan was to make sure that they would round up people into concentration camps the way they did with the Japanese, the internment camps, as well as to shut down areas, grids of electricity in the areas where blacks were consolidated. Also to place bombs, most people don't know, to place impediments or areas, or to set up roadblocks, or to cordon off whole communities.
Freeway systems in black areas are designed to really regulate the community. For example, out here in Los Angeles, South Central LA is really surrounded by 4 freeways. It's surrounded by the 10 freeway, the 110, the 405 freeway, and the 105 freeway. During the LA riots in 1992, a lot of people don't know that they actually shut the freeways down, and they were going to start bringing in the National Guard, where they actually did bring in the National Guard. So the black community, they always have freeway systems there because they never know when they need to implement that King Alfred plan, when they need to go in there with military tanks, if there's some racial insurrection, and really suppress the black community. So that's one of the reasons for the freeway systems being directly on top of the black communities around the country.
And every black community in America got expressways that went right through them, destroyed them. If you want to find out where the old black communities used to be, go in the city and find the expressways. There's a direct relationship between having the businesses and being in prison. Go see how many Asians you can find in American prisons. You ain't gonna be in there. But 51% of your prison will be black because blacks don't have any businesses and industries. There's a direct link. Blacks won't practice group economics. Blacks won't practice group politics. If you don't practice, you're setting yourselves up, I told that 5-story building, you're setting yourself to get wiped out. Understand the nature of race, which is economics. If you build the first floor, it's economic. Build your businesses and your industries. Control business and industry, and put that pulls in your money, and hold that money, and practice group economics with it. Arab and Asian money bounces 12 to 13 times what it leaves. Jewish money bounces 18 times. Black folk got to learn how to practice group economics. Black Americans spend every penny they get outside their own community. Then you take the money and the wealth that you get from that first floor and go to the second floor. The second floor is politics. You then take that money on the first floor and you control your politics. Black folk must quit allowing people to tell them to go out and vote. Vote for what? Nobody's gonna do anything for black folk in politics. Politics is controlled by money, major corporations who got the money. That's what controls politics. If you have no money, you have no say-so, you have no benefits coming. So you take your money and you control, and you take your money from the first floor, you buy every politician on the second floor. And then the politician you can't buy, you rent or lease them to get what you need. Then once you get the second floor under control with your politician, with your money, then you go to the third floor. The third floor then is the police department and the court systems. You take your money from the first floor and your politics on the second floor, and you control the court system and the police departments. Then the fourth floor, then is media. You then take the money that you generate off the first floor from business and industries, and you go after radio stations, TV stations, newspapers, and cable systems, so that you can now inform and communicate with your own people. Right now, black folk own and control less than 35 thousandths of 1% of the media in the United States. Out of 12,000 radio stations, black folk own about 75, 80. That's all. You own no cable systems. You don't have a daily newspaper. You have nothing of importance. You got about 1 black TV station. And so you can't communicate with your people, you can't inform your people, you can't do anything. You can have Rush Limbaugh and all the rest of the guys talking about racism all day long and bad-mouthing you, and O'Reilly's. They can call black folk all kind of names all day long. What are you gonna do? You can't respond. You can't communicate with your own people because you don't have an economic base. 51% of all the prisoners in the United States are black people. You know you only make up 12% of the population. That's no accident. It's because you don't control the economics and the politics. and they're gonna go after the weakest people they can get their hands on to incarcerate them. That's the black folk. And what are you gonna do in response to it when they over incarcerate you? You're gonna go out and have a march, a demonstration. We're gonna march. March for what? Who cares? Marching, they never changed anything.
The prison industrial complex is not going to work, because you cannot put people in prison that way naturally. It'll last a while. Have your fun. But within 100 years, that's not going to exist. I believe white supremacy was born to die, and everything it does in its ignorant arrogance kills itself. It's meant to die. And what they're doing is they're setting up their own suicide by doing that to other human beings. Some of the most gifted human beings I've met were in prison. Some of the most gifted human beings I've ever met have been in special education. And to think that those young people, male and female, could be educated to cure cancer, to go into outer space, to build things that our community needs, but you'd rather put them in prison because of the color of their skin, what goes around comes around. You shall reap what you sow.
The best way to control melanated people is keeping them poor and disenfranchised, and this is what has happened to black people in America. There's a reason why black people have been economically undermined, because it's very easy to control poor people. When people are poor, you can do whatever you want to them, and they won't have the economic power to fight back. They won't have the economic power to put a politician into power to help them out. They won't have the economic base to really take care of their basic needs, so then you can control them any way you want to.
See, white folk lend us money. They don't pay us, because they know that they're going to get it right back.
1866 and up to about into the 1920s, black folk had the greatest economic achievement they've ever had in this country. Even though it didn't occur under integration, it occurred under segregation. Those black folk had managed to acquire over 20 million acres of land, according to the United States Census in 1920. 20 million acres of land. But between 1920s and 1950s, they lost almost all of it. Back in the 1920s up to the 1940s, we had black broom factories, we had black mattress factories. Almost every black major city had at least 2 cab companies. We had black bus companies, we had black shipyard up here in Baltimore. When I say black bus lines, I'm not talking about just having 3 or 4 buses. We had over 500 buses. And this is in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And our bus company didn't just service just the black neighborhoods, it serviced the blacks and the white neighborhoods. We had 2 black cab companies. We had the Harris Cab Companies and the Campbell City Cab Companies. But they used to have their own restaurants. They had the best nightclubs in the country. The blacks had 2 baseball leagues. Each baseball league had 8 teams. We had over 500 of the best baseball players in the world. But what did they do? They wanted to integrate. So as soon as they put Jackie Robinson on the Brooklyn Dodgers, black folks said, we'll give up all of our black baseball leagues, black teams, and all our black players, and we can just get one black boy to play on a white team.
Black Americans were gung-ho about integration because we thought that would be our passport to freedom. We equated integration with freedom.
That scared whites to death. And see, at that time you had whites, a lot of these white separate communities. You had white Polish communities, you had white Jewish communities, you had white Italian communities, you had white Irish communities. And white folks said, well, if these blacks are going to integrate, we're going to come together and organize as a unit. And so white folks then dropped all their little communities and said, no, we're going to organize as a one white block. We're not going to talk about I'm being Polish and you're Irish and German anymore. We ain't going to do that anymore. We're going to stick together as a group. Because we're not going to let all these blacks come and penetrate us.
Because we were doing things and becoming self-sufficient, that became a threat. So instead of them just coming out and attacking, because they couldn't just come out with an all-out attack, we were a little bit too strong for that, and we would have fought back, and there would have been a civil unrest that would have definitely undermined the security of the country. Instead, they said, well, let's invite them into a place that they've always coveted, and that is into the white estuaries of power, into the white citadels of power. Let us make sure we bring them in and incorporate them to us. And therefore, being that they're going to have to buy their facilities and all their materials from us, they're going to have to interface with us anyway, they're going to dress like us, act like us, and we will take the best of what they have and capitalize eventually and take it over. We will have quelled or stopped any threat or competition to our business. And that's exactly what they did.
So black folks stripped themselves of all their resources. They stripped themselves of their unity. They stripped themselves of the role model when all blacks used to live together. Then they had their own role models. All the doctors and lawyers and teachers with the black lived all together. You had a sense of community. You knew each other, you trusted each other, you worked with each other, you participated with each other. You learned how to buy from each other, to sell each other, to support each other, to care about each other, to love each other. When black folk up into integration, blacks never locked their homes.
We practice a very profound humanity. If an Asian opens a store in our community, we do not boycott and discriminate against them. If an Arab opens a store in our community, we do not boycott and discriminate against them. If a Jewish person opens a store in our community, we do not boycott and discriminate against them. We shop with all peoples. We treat all peoples equally. The problem is they're not treating us equally. See, we caught in our own humanity. And until we begin to address that and demand that others practice towards us the same human concern and love that we practice towards them, we will stay in this situation.
Durham, North Carolina was the most progressive and best black Wall Street we had in America. That's why you had all the black major insurance companies, mortgage companies, and banks and all was in Durham, North Carolina. Durham, North Carolina was the black Wall Street.
Tulsa race riot. And it wasn't really a race riot because the people who rioted were the whites, not the Africans. The Africans defended their territory. They defended their stores and their businesses and their families, but they were destroyed by the whites who were envious of the economic power base that they had developed. And so you'll find that the disturbance ended when the sheriff of Tulsa commandeered a plane and had the pilot fly over the black community and drop sticks of dynamite. So Tulsa became the first city in the world that was bombed from the air.
It was also a way to destroy the ability for a black competition, because essentially the world knew what was happening in the United States to black people, and they were going to give deference to black businesses in Europe even, because France was ready to do business with Tulsa, Oklahoma. England was ready to do business with Tulsa, Oklahoma, except there are certain parts in Parliament that did not want that. Canada was ready to do business. South America was ready to do business with South. All of Africa, we were ready to essentially undermine what those cotton plantations had built up in the form of commerce for the United States. And they had to make sure that that was destroyed.
There was a group from Tulsa, an R&B group from Tulsa, the Gap Band. Had a song called You Dropped the Bomb on Me, Baby. It's about the Tulsa riot. Gap Band, GAP. GAP are the initials for the streets Greenwood, Archer, and Pine, which was the hub of Black Tulsa Business District.
They have this whole thing that black people get handouts, that black people are dependent on the government. Black people, if we're going to be very honest, black people have never got anything specifically from our government at the exclusion of another group. Never. Black people have never gotten any kind of welfare benefits at the exclusion of another group. Black people have never gotten affirmative action at the exclusion of another group. Affirmative action benefits white women more than anybody.
Slavery was affirmative action. Slavery was affirmative action. Jim Crow segregation was affirmative action. It was rewarding those people who had certain kind of skin complexion. That's what it was for. Affirmative action was written to be corrective action. C-O-R-R-E-C-T-I-V-E, corrective. Corrective action for what? For something that the government has consistently done to impede, to exploit, to degrade, and to degenerate a specific group of people. That's what it was written for. It had nothing to do with gender, handicap, senior citizens, gays, midgets, humpbacks, just black people. That's the only people the government had systematically at all levels, from the state, county, and federal level, had gone out of their way to pass laws, slave codes, and see, blacks couldn't get out of slavery because of the federal government.
The average black business can't even get the capital to present itself to the black population that the other people can get the capital to do. Now, one would ask the question, how can all these poor immigrants come to this country and have all this capital? If they had that capital, why did they leave home? And if they didn't have the capital when they left home, how are they getting this capital here when they have no credit records and they have no paper trail and they have not, so who's capitalizing them? And I think if we begin to look at that question, we'll begin to get to the bottom of what's going on in the black community.
See, and you cannot, it's impossible in theory and practice to acquire wealth and power or to be economically competitive without a community. And right now in America, black folk do not have not one single solitary community in America. You cannot prosper, you cannot compete. It's going to be very difficult for black folk even to survive under the present circumstances because they don't have communities. All black folk got are neighborhoods. A neighborhood is like a bucket with a hole in it. A neighborhood is where you eat and sleep. A community is where you store your values, your history, your wealth, your power, your resources, your jobs, your tax base. Most of these neighborhoods have gotten so bad and so crime-ridden and run down and so dysfunctional that the neighbor has moved and all you got left is a hood. There's nothing left in them. We have a ranking order of acceptability in our society based on skin color, going white, yellow, brown, black. It's in a descending color order, going from the whitest to the darkest. And the wealth is also distributed along the same lines. The whitest at the top got the wealth, power, and resources going down. It trickles down, all the way down. The power and resources, as they go up and down, the further you go away from the white, the thinner it becomes, the weaker it becomes. And black folk are not that silly. They can say, consequently, if I want something, I'm gonna try to identify with anything that's close to white as possible. And that's why you come up with this saying all the time about white ice is colder than black ice. They want to identify with it. But they never understand that rather than identifying with it, why don't you go acquire your own? Then your black ice will be just as cold as white ice. Black folk on an aggregated national disposable basis of collected income, they might be the 9th richest nation on earth. Right now, if I take all the black folks' money annually and aggregate it, they might be rich. They're richer than maybe Sweden, Canada, India, Pakistan, whole bunch of countries, Thailand, folks most all put together. But the difference is, what I keep trying to tell blacks, it doesn't make any difference because it's not aggregated. When you aggregate something, you strengthen exponentially the power of it by multiplying the multiplying factor, by putting them together and then piling it up, making it stronger. But unfortunately, we are the only people that don't want that to occur. Because you know why? Because traditionally, whites saw black folk aggregate as being a negative, and we see everything through the eyes of whites. Typically, anytime anything that exceeds more than 6% of something that's black, the whites are in charge of it, and you get more than 6%, that sets off alarm in the white society. If right now, if I move into a neighborhood and I'm the only black, whites will accept the one black or the two blacks. But the minute you start getting up further than that, they go on alert. So by the time you hit 6, you know what happened then? They started putting their houses up for sale. If I go in an organization, I got one black in that organization, it's all white organization, they'll accept the one black or two blacks. But the more blacks you come in trying to integrate, that becomes a threat to the dominant society. And they'll either move out of that organization, move out of that neighborhood, or even go to school and take their kids out of school. And where are they gonna move? They're not gonna move to a more integrated society, they're gonna move back with their own people. When a white person takes his kid out of a school, out of an integrated school, he's not gonna go and try to find another integrated school. He's gonna take his kid to a segregated academy, a charter school, or an all-white suburb.
If you went back to, the 1500s, slavery's in full effect, okay? and you go to a slave or an African and you say right there, while he's picking the cotton, right there, yo, man, what you think about this whole situation you in right now? You're going to get two types of people. You're going to get three. You're going to get one type of person say, what situation? I'm just picking cotton. Then you're going to get another person that says, well, you know, it's kind of, you know, Master Charlie kind of hard on me, but he all right. Then you get this other person that's like, yo, what's your name? You got something called a MAP? I'm trying to get out of here. These are the three people you're going to meet on the plantation. In the 1500, these are the three people you're going to meet. I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't care that I'm here, and I'm trying to get the hell out of here. Come now, 2012. Ask a person in any job situation, where they go, you're going to be three types of people. One, why do you work for FedEx? What do you mean, why I work for FedEx? I got a job. Why do you work for FedEx? Well, you know, it is hard hours, man. It's long. I've been driving this truck. It's crazy, but it's the best I can do right now, and I get a good check. Last person, why do you work at FedEx? I don't work here. I'm really an MC. I'm waiting for my opportunity to record my album. I'm only doing this right now so I can eat. Yo, really? My name is da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I'm trying to get free.
The colors, they're not lost. They're hidden. Lost you may never find. Hidden you just gotta look for.
Know your purpose. You have a purpose. Everything alive in nature, even inanimate objects, have purpose. You have a purpose. Know your purpose. If you don't know your purpose, link up with someone who knows their purpose. Chances are when you link up with someone who knows their purpose, you find yours.
A major solution to countering the war on melanated people is to read, to do what was illegal for your ancestors to do during the period of enslavement. It's no accident that laws were passed preventing African people from reading or writing. If you can't tell where you came from, you can't pass on that knowledge to your descendants.
There are many retired teachers, old school teachers in the 60s and 70s that remember the old system of teaching. Remember how it was, ABCs first, your dynamics of mathematics, what it is. Those old school teachers are sitting there with nothing to do. They're just getting a pension and they're rotting away. Get together in your community. Get a home, rent a building or whatever, and use her, who has the credentials of a teacher, and the homeschooling credentials together, and teach your own children. Create your own curriculum. Teach them, of course, to keep up in the outer world as far as competition is concerned and what to do, but teach your own children, because the psychological dynamic of your own being taught by you is enormous, has ramifications way down the line when they go out into the other world.
Travel is very important in terms of real education. To be somewhere in that instance, to actually go somewhere and be in that place definitely sheds a lot of knowledge on things that are hidden in one society and is beaming like sunlight in another one.
What I've learned in traveling to Africa, specifically in South Africa, I had assumed as I got involved in the African-centered movement in the late 80s and learning all of these wonderful stories about ancient African history and culture, I assumed the continental Africans knew that history. But when I went to South Africa and started talking about Kemet, they had no idea. And why was that? Because they were socialized.
We hear about the Asian scramble for Africa. We hear about the East Indian scramble, the European scramble for Africa. There should be an African-American scramble for Africa. We should be going into Africa with our finances organized and saying, guess what? We're going to invest in this oil. Here's $5 million up front, okay? Show us a budget on paper. What do you need for the refineries? Okay, what are they going to cost? Where are you going to purchase them from? We're going to invest in that. We're going to invest in the diamonds. Enough of De Beers and Oppenheimer, okay? We're going to sell our own diamonds. Isn't it amazing that 90% of the world's diamonds comes out of the ground of Africa, and there's not a black man on earth who sells diamonds anywhere?
Ghanaian chiefs came together in ceremonies with African Americans. I was there, I saw it with my own eyes. And they apologized for their ancestors selling us into enslavement. They apologized and they opened the door for African Americans to come back to Ghana. And the Ghanaian government passed legislation giving land and citizenship to any African American who wanted to come back to Ghana. And hundreds, if not thousands, have taken them up on that offer.
During the administration of Jimmy Carter, Zbigniew Brzezinski wrote a white paper that was sent to all State Department agencies that everything in their power had to be done to keep African Americans and Africans from uniting politically, culturally, or economically.
Sisters and brothers on the continent are told, don't mess with those African Americans. They do drugs, they're violence, they don't respect themselves, they don't respect their women. And I've been told by people who come here as students and what have you, that their parents are warned. Tell their children, don't mess around with those African Americans. Bad things will happen to you. So there's a deliberate lack of connectedness. And I think that the powers that be understand the potential of the link up between Africans in the diaspora and Africans at home.
I deal a lot with African brothers and sisters who come here all the time. Some of them who have temporary visas, school visas, working visas, and some who have actually become citizens. And I know for a fact that when they come here and come through customs, they are given an orientation into living in America. And one of the things that they are specifically told to do is stay away from African Americans. They're not good people to hang around. In fact, I've even heard that there is a video shown, a propaganda video that is shown to African immigrants, kind of highlighting some of the negative things that African Americans participate in and how they should stay away from us. So without a doubt, that threat of a Pan-African unification is something that, you know, the global powers of the world is very concerned about, especially with the intermingling of black folk from all over the world. And that's why when you come across a lot of Africans, they're afraid to interact with you because they've been told by the government that allowed them to be here in the first place that we don't want to see you around them. And that's why you tend not to see their participation in our political organizations, because many of them are not citizens, so they can be deported at a second's notice. And as we know, because of racism, an African is more likely to be deported than anybody else for subversive activity. That doesn't mean we can't work with them.
How do you fix it? You have to govern yourself. Nation building begins with governing your family. Black men, stay home. You don't have to be at the bar every week. You ain't got to be out with the buddies. Tend to your wife and your children. Make them the priority in your life and govern your family. Link with other men that are governing their families. Too many times, black men that are good with their families link up with other black men that corrupt them and destroy the family. The only way a nation can be built is if the family is intact. A nation is a bunch of united families. That's what a nation is.
Once you build those things, learn how to start practicing group economics. Group economics means that every nickel, every dollar, penny comes in your hands, make sure it revolves around and goes to other black folks' hands at least 8 to 12 times before it leaves. That means if you've got a black community, a dollar comes in, you go down to the black grocery store and buy your black groceries. The black grocery store owner, he goes over to the black barber and gets his hair cut from a black barber. The black barber then goes down and buys his car from a black automobile dealership. The black automobile dealership then goes ride in a black cab. And you understand what I'm saying?
The black community doesn't need any new leaders. Black people just have to get on the same page with one another and black people will be all right. The thing is, there's no gay leader. The gay community just happens to be on the same page with one another, and they know how to get their needs met. There's no Jewish leader. There's no white leader. White people, Jewish people, all of these groups, they just happen to be on the same page, and this is where their strength comes from, and they know how to get their needs met. The thing is, black people, we're too divisive among each other. So we have to get on the same page, and that will alleviate many of our problems right there.
Go back to all those black and white films where you saw the Klan marching on Washington. Thousands of white men in hooded robes marching. Where are all those robes today? So they burned them all. This is what baffles me about American society. Who cleans these robes? These robes are not machine washable. They got patches and stuff on them. You got to take it to the cleaners. Who's upgrading and mending, sewing, and keeping all those robes in material existence to this day? Who's doing that work? Who's doing? Where the robes go? Why you can't get one on auction? Why you don't see one at the Salvation Army? Thrift shop, Klan robe at the thrift shop. Somebody turned it in. Why you don't see that? Because people are still holding on to them. They even still wearing them. Maybe not outside, but somewhere it's still getting worn. Now I could tell you where all the Black Panther outfits are. They got holes in them with red liquid all over them. I can tell you where the guns went. The cops took them after they shot this guy. Come on. Fred Hampton, I can tell you where his guns went. We know what happened to our movements. What happened to the other one?
I would say that what you do for yourself depends on what you think of yourself. And what you think of yourself depends on what you know of yourself. And what you know of yourself depends on what you have been told. Never allow anybody to tell you that history and culture is not important. Never let anybody say that happened a long time ago, get over it. Make your history sacred. Malcolm X used to say, of all our studies, it is history that is most qualified to reward our research. Believe that what you do makes a difference in the world, that we do not have to be passive victims, that you can blame other people for your victimization, but for your rehabilitation, your salvation, your liberation, that's your responsibility.
We're supposed to be controlling like black hair. We're the only people got a certain texture of hair, thickness in hair. It calls curly or kinky, what you want to call it. Why is it the Koreans are controlling black hair care? At 85 cents out of every dollar goes to Asians and Koreans. Why are Koreans and Chinese controlling black hair care and black hair care products? Because you're not practicing group economics. When I go to a Chinese place and I ask them to buy something from black folk, they won't do it. Some black distributors came right here to Washington, D.C., to 8th Street right over here, and said, we'd like to meet with some merchants, sell you some products. And the agent said, what do you want to sell? He said, we'll sell you some of the same products you got on your shelf right now. We'll sell it to you and give you a 25 to 30% discount. The agent said, we're not interested. The agent said, but with a 25, 30% discount, you're still not interested? They said, no. They said, why not? The agent said, you black folk don't understand. It ain't the money. It's that we only buy from our own people. You blacks are the only people that buy from any and everybody.
School books, textbooks. We need to put pressure on the schools so that this information is brought in. Put pressure on the pastor so that you have a Sunday school class that teaches about the black presence in the Bible. All kinds of basic things that we can do. I don't think it's rocket science. I think it's just a matter of us sitting down and strategizing and then implementing those strategies.
The thing is, you can alter nature temporarily. If you tame an animal, you can tame a wild animal to do circus tricks, but after a while, that animal is going to turn on you and go back to its original nature. You can travel around the world and you see societies that are engulfed in trees, vines. Nature has engulfed certain vast civilizations. Certain civilizations are covered in sand. Nature has taken back over. Certain civilizations are immersed underwater. Nature has taken back over. So again, you can alter nature temporarily, but nature will always triumph. Nature will always win. Melanin is nature.
Civil rights is a waste of time. Because again, you're using a very broad term. If you see these women groups out here, what are they doing? They're looking for women's rights. What are you looking for? They're looking for veteran rights. What are you looking for? I'm looking for Indian rights. What are you looking for? I'm looking for Hispanic rights. What are you looking for? I'm looking for Arab rights. What are you looking for? I'm looking for gay rights. Until you get to black folk. You're not looking for, they're looking for civil rights. Who in the world is civil?
You know, there's a lot of shame that has, washed over poor black communities in particular, a lot of shaming and blaming, and we've got to end that and come together as a community and say we are committed to ending this system once and for all, and open our hearts to young men returning home from prison rather than just wagging a finger at them and saying, why can't you do better? There's a lot of reasons why folks aren't able to do better than they are today.
Do not think about racism in the term of hating anybody. Don't hate any whites, don't hate any Asians, don't hate any Arabs, don't hate anybody. It ain't about hating anybody. But neither is it about loving anybody. It's about learning how to compete economically as a group.
I have visited high schools and colleges and elementary schools where the predominant children are of European descent. And at the end of my presentation, they're hurt because they say, I don't have any problem identifying with Africa. If that's where I came from, that's where I came from. As you get older, and I've noticed it's right at the end of college going into post-college, that you have to buy into the untruth because that's the very essence of your being now. And much of what you get, whether it be a job or whether it be an advantage, comes from what's called white privilege. And out of this white privilege comes the ability to get things that you want. You want to feed your family. You want to take care of things. You want a job. But you want it fairly. You don't want it unfairly. You don't want to think that a whole group of people have been shunned out of a position because your skin color gave it to you. As you get older, it's hard to give that up, that privilege.
We begin to understand this is about behavior and our behavior towards nature. Black people just incidentally happen to be an object in nature. It is those who have behaved inappropriately, or most whites don't behave inappropriately. Most whites are actually as victimized as most people of color. Where the confusion is, because of the whiteness of skin, most whites think they will have an opportunity to ascend to the position of power of those who are doing the oppressing. And that's where their confusion comes in. Meanwhile, they suffer and tolerate that suffering, whereas others may resist it because we know we can never make that ascension.
Who protects the interests of this group? Who really protects the interests of this group? The ones who enslaved you are protecting your interests, even if they free you. That's like a rapist keeping you in prison for 10 years, raping you every day for 10 years. You insane with it. Then the 11th year, he says, I reached an epiphany, I was wrong. I shouldn't have did that. You're free to go. Now you're free to go. Go where? Free? Your whole heart is screwed up. Where you going? That same person says, okay, you can stay in one of my rooms called Chicago. You can stay in one of my rooms called New York. One of my rooms called Philly. Just follow the rules there in Philly and you'll be fine. I'm sorry for what I did. Here's reparation, no, not even reparation, here's affirmative action. Here's some justice in the courts. Here's a little money, here's a little economics. Here's a little access to something. I'll let you fight in our wars and here's a little something. But for the most part, you're on your own now. Do you. Now here we are. Crazy, deranged, walking around, being raped for 300 years. Now you free. And your head is going, woo! But here's the point. You were God to begin with. This is what we forgot. This is what we forgot. You were God to begin with. So you did get beat, raped, punched, lynched, burned. But what happened? You're still here. And what is still here? Not the bodies that were burned, not the hangings, the innocent victims, but the spirit that created those people, the force that animates us, never died.